we all saw the numbers from the Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics this week about the contribution of agriculture goods exports to Nigeria's trade volume and value and the trade balance in the first quarter of 2018. Those numbers came in very nicely. But of course, in terms of investment in agriculture across in Nigeria and across Africa, still looks like a very big issue. Funding is still a big problem, which have been tracked not just here but around the world about how we need to increase funding for agriculture with what everyone's already putting on the table. Let's expand this conversation around underinvestment in the agriculture sector, which Demiari Vaughan, who is sitting in the Abuja office this morning. It's good to see you again. We had some conversation a few months ago around agriculture. Of course, Demiari is the CEO at Alluvial Agriculture. It's good to have you. Now, let's bring us up to speed about underinvestment. When we say underinvestment, don't we have all it takes to have investment pouring into this sector, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent?
Thanks a lot, Basin. Good to speak with you again. You're right. Understanding investment flows and how to attract investments to agriculture is key to our agricultural development in this continent. One of the challenges we have is that if you look at the investments going into agriculture, a lot of the foreign investments are going into processing, and majority of the investments going into primary production are catalyzed by various government agencies and even the CBN. So the private sector needs to step in very strongly in this regard for us to see the kind of development that we need in the agricultural sector. And one key issue is around the size of our ambition. A lot of foreign investors don't want to invest $1 million in agriculture or any other sector for that matter. It is easier to raise $10 million than to raise $10,000. This is something that we must understand as Nigerian entrepreneurs in the agricultural sector. If we understand that investors are looking for big ticket items and plan accordingly, then we will begin to see that sort of investment coming in.
Yeah, investors want big ticket transactions. Yes, that's what makes sense. But again, we still have to fund agriculture, not just at that very big ticket level, AAA, whatever it is, but also at the bottom of the pyramid. We still can't divorce sustainable, what you call subsistence, farming or agriculture from the culture in Africa. So someone has to fund that.
Yes, so that's why, for instance, alluvial agriculture's funding strategy is around aggregating large numbers of smallholders. That's why we're talking about the 100,000 farmer mark. We are not talking about funding 5 farmers or 1,000 farmers. We need to talk about looking at large numbers and coming up with clear plans that are realizable around big numbers. So talking about big numbers does not mean leaving out the smallholders. It's about making sure that the smallholders are part of a coherent, large investment strategy. So that's what we're talking about. When we talk about 100,000 farmers, we didn't just pluck the numbers from the sky. It's because that number is a number that makes sense in terms of an investment strategy.
When we talk about agricultural investment and whether for in particular for small landowners, land is very important. So a few days ago, Nigeria's vice president was speaking at the land reform conference there where you are in Abuja, when he said there's a need to rethink the entire land issue in Nigeria. What are your thoughts about how important and how critical land is in ensuring that we have the right investment for agriculture?
Yeah, I agree. Land is very important, and land development even more so. Investors have not, in my view, found it's difficult to access land. If you go to most Nigerian communities and explain that you want to invest in agriculture, if the land is there, they'll cooperate with you to make sure that the land is utilizable for the purpose of that investment. But what is needed now is a process by which it doesn't take too long to formalize land transactions so that investors can have the confidence that they have the right titles to secure their investments. We need to find a way of making this much quicker, and this is where the role of government comes in. But outside that, I will advise people going into agricultural investment that they need also not wait until land title is formalized in this way. They can enter into long-term agreements with the landowners, be they families or communities, and that should be sufficient to get going. After all, your title is only as good as your relationship with the community. Once you have that, then you are good to go, because from our experience in this country, the banks don't even consider ownership of land as an important ingredient to your investment. So why stress so much about that?
So what is the most important factor for banks?
Well, I don't know what the most important factor is for them, but they tend to be very reluctant funding agriculture, particularly primary agriculture. This is probably also because many of them do not understand agriculture very well. So the people who are responsible for risk assessment are general risk assessors, not people who are particularly engaged in the agri sector enough to understand how that sector works. And because of the fact that many farmers go into farming without insurance, many of our farm strategies do not take into consideration the know-how part of it. Seeds are provided, chemicals are provided, but there is not enough expertise to go around this country right now to support farmers with the right agronomical practices that they need to be successful at farming. So all this combined to make primary agriculture a bit risky in this country, and that's why banks are shying away from it, apart, of course, from the fact that most banks just want to do the easy thing. They are not prepared to go down there to the farm and work with the farmers to see that the investment they are making is a successful one.